Hello, this is MrChabry, and just like we looked at the grass type, now it's time to look at the fire type. There's not as many, so we're going to get through these probably a little bit quicker. But the fire type is a pretty great type. They do a lot for your team, and we're going to start by looking at the starter fire type of X and Y, and that's going to be Delphox. Now, Delphox is meant to be a fast Pokemon that hits pretty hard on that special attack stat. You can see 104 speed, that's pretty good. 114 special attack, that's also pretty good. And the cool thing about this is it gains the psychic typing, which if you look at that, it gives it so many resistances, fire and psychic together. Now, you do get 5 weaknesses, but you get much more in resistances. So I think that is a pretty cool typing. Plus, with that 114 special attack, you get some decent moves that you can run with. Psychic and Fire Blast, of course. Grass Knot for coverage. Calm Mind if you want to set up. And that would help you out quite a bit. You also get things like Dazzling Gleam. That'll help you out against Dragon types. And Dark types, which Delphox will struggle against Dark types otherwise. And you can also run things like Light Screen. Say you want to run a set that uses the move Roleplay. Now that's an interesting move. All the starters, their main ability is going to be Blaze or a variant of Blaze, where if you are in the yellow, your either fire, grass, or water moves get boosted, and that is a pretty great stat. Plus, you know, you've got decent special defense. So I think Delphox is a great choice if you want to just go with the starter in terms of fire types. Now, Talonflame is also a decent fire type. It has Fire Flying, which it does give it a huge weakness to rock, but you can see here, you've got a lot of resistances, and you even gain an immunity in ground. Now, stat-wise, this thing is meant to be fast, and you want to focus on that attack stat. Now, it's not the best attack stat, but it's the best thing for you to focus on with your Talonflame. And that speed stat means you're going to be outspeeding a lot of things. And it does get decent moves like Acrobatics, Brave Bird, Flare Blitz, and Roost is good for healing yourself up. You can also run Swords Dance, which will boost that attack up. And in terms of ability, you can go Flame Body, but Gale Wings is the better option. I think Gale Wings might be a hidden ability, but Gale Wings, it boosts, basically boosts the priority of flying type moves. And in Generation 6, it doesn't matter how much health you've got on this thing, those flying type moves are always going first. So yeah, that's an ability they actually nerfed after this generation. But even with that, Flame Body's better, and it helps you out with your defense stat, because your defenses aren't great. Special attack's not that great. So focus on Swords Dancing up. Focus on that speed. Focus on attack if you want to use this thing. Simisear, same thing as all the other Simi Pokemon. They are outclassed early on. If you want to run this thing, think of it as a challenge mode Pokemon. It might help you out in the early game stuff, but it gets outclassed so fast. Next Pokemon I want to look at is Pyroar. Now, out of all the fire types, I feel like Pyroar, sorry, might be the biggest letdown in terms of some of these Pokemon in Generation 6. I mean, look at this thing. This thing looks like it would be a threat. But first off, let's look at these stats. It has terrible attack stat. You're telling me a lion is going to be outclassed by, say, a monkey? Are you telling me that? Yeah, so just keep in mind, this thing is terrible on the attack stat. You want to run it for that special attack, which, I mean, special attack, it does get pretty decent things like Fire Blast, Hyper Voice, but you would think you'd want an attacker, a physical attacker, but you want that special attack. It's got decent speed. Its bulk is garbage, though. And in terms of abilities, its abilities are not that great. I mean, Rivalry, it's very dependent on the gender of the opponent's Pokemon, if that actually helps you out. And if you notice, yeah, if it's this, it does a boost on same gender targets. but it reduces on opposite gender targets. So that's not that great, because as you play through X and Y, you're going to have a good variance of male and female Pokemon. So that's not that great. Moxie is, I believe that's a hidden ability, but even though, look at it, attack stat is raised, you're not focusing on that attack stat because that's already garbage. Unnerve might be the best thing for this, and it's still not that great. Fire Normal is a pretty cool typing. I mean, look at all those resistances. It gives you ghost immunity. All those resistances are from the fire type, though. And it does add a fighting type weakness, but it does add that ghost immunity too, so that might be a good trade-off. But I do feel like this is a Pokemon that is kind of disappointing. I don't know why they've made the stat distribution like it is and gave it the abilities it did. This thing really needs something to help it out. Next up is Charizard. Now, Charizard is one of the Kanto starters that you gain access to, and honestly, this is a great fire type in terms of what it gives you and what you can do with this. So, looking at base Charizard, you're running a 109 special attack, which is pretty good, and a 100 speed. So right there, it is pretty decent. However, you also get the Mega Stones. So let's look at the two options. Now, the Mega Stones you get if you choose Charizard depend on which version of the game you get. If you're playing through Pokemon X, well, you get yourself Mega Charizard X, which becomes Fire Dragon, which is a really great type. And it gets huge boost in that attack and huge boost in special attack. And you're going to be able to hit things pretty hard. That defense also gets a boost. So Mega Charizard X is great if you want a Dragon type on your team, and it can hit things pretty hard. Now, Mega Charizard Y is also a great choice. Look at that special attack stat, 159. Things are falling to the flamethrowers from this thing. And it has that ability Drought. So these abilities are great. Drought, you're going to boost up your Fire-type moves. You're going to weaken Water-type moves. Tough Claws, you're going to boost up those Contact moves. And, you know, something like Flare Blitz or Dragon Claw. Mega X will help you with that. Mega Y, Flamethrower, even Fire Blast would just rip through everything. So really great Pokemon that we have here. I think Charizard is probably one of the strongest fire types in this playthrough if you're wanting to go with a Kanto starter. And it gives you so many options that you can run with. We're not going to focus on Volcanion. This is a Pokemon that was an event Pokemon. And if you're doing a normal playthrough, you can't really get this thing. Now, if we just glance at it, it is a great Pokemon. It has good bulk, good special attack, really cool typing. But you can't catch this thing. You can't use it in a normal playthrough of X and Y, and you really don't have access to it anymore. So, I'm sorry, Volcanion fans. This thing is out of reach. Houndoom is another great Pokemon. Now, looking at Houndoom, you know, you've got the normal base stats. It has good special attack, decent speed. Dark and Fire is a really cool typing. Look at that. All those resistances. It gives you a psychic immunity. It's a really good Pokemon. Early Bird's not that great. Flash Fire is what you want to go with. It gives you a boost when you get hit with Fire-type moves. But its bulk has a lot to be needed. Now, here in X and Y, you also have access to the Mega Stone for Mega Houndoom, and that gets a huge boost in special attack and speed. Keep in mind, a lot of these Mega Stones are only available in the later part of the game, so this would be more of like maybe a post-game type thing. And you can see it has great stats across the board. 115 speed, 140 special attack. This thing hits hard. It goes pretty fast. 90 attack. That's not a slouch. When I use this thing in competitive, I often ran Sucker Punch on it just to catch things off guard that would normally outspeed this thing and knock it out. And it worked pretty fine. But you can see mostly what you're going to be focusing on is up here, the base form, and it does have some decent things that it can do. Now, be careful because it is very frail. It is a definition of a glass cannon. It gets hit, and it takes a lot of damage, and it gets knocked out pretty easily. But if you can hit things with, say, a Dark Pulse, a Flamethrower, you can hit things pretty hard, and it does do those things really well. You can also give it Nasty Plot, which will boost up that special attack even more. So Houndoom is a pretty decent Pokemon. It does get outclassed by a few things, but if you want a Dark Fire type, that's a pretty good one. Flareon is a Pokemon that is kind of unfortunate because it is it's dunked on as being the worst evolution. And I mean, if we look at some of the issues with it, I mean, it has 130 attack, which is really good, but it's pretty slow, and it's not very bulky. It does have good special defense, I'll give it that. But 65 HP, 60 defense, it doesn't take that many hits. It does have some decent opportunity with its special attack, but its attack stat is what you're focused on. And Flash Fire is going to be helpful. You're going to switch it in and get a boost on the fire type move. Guts is a hidden ability, so don't worry about that. If you did get it, though, it's really a good Pokemon. You do have to... You can't really burn this thing, so you have to poison it somehow. But this thing can hit really hard with that decent attack stat. I always suggest something like Flare Blitz. Quick attack to give you some speed edge, because this thing is slow. Double Edge, it doesn't get the best move pool, so Double Edge is also suggested for this thing. And that's kind of the downfall of Flareon. It's got good attack stat, but it doesn't have great moves to take advantage of that. And its speed is middling. So, I do like Flareon, but it's just outclassed by a few things. You do have access of the Cantonian birds through your playthrough. So, let's start by looking at Moltres. This is a pretty decent fire-type Pokemon. You have Fire Flying. We've seen that a few times. And it has really good special attack. Now, this thing can hit things really hard. And it has decent speed, decent attack. So, across the board, pretty decent. You're going to be running with Pressure, so that's pretty good. And you do get Hurricane in this generation, so you can run Hurricane, Fire Blast. The thing suggests Will-O-Wisp, and I can see why, because, you know, 90, you want to help that out. Roost to get some of that health back. You can do things like that. I do think Moltres is a great Pokemon. Next up is Magcargo. Now, on paper, you know, that defense stat looks good, but its typing makes it weak to a lot of things that you're going to come across. Like water and ground, you're going to see a lot of those. You do have some decent resistances, which I do think is good, but its defense stat is all that it comes prepared with. It's got not that great special attack, not that great special defense, and its HP stat is pretty garbage. And it's a snail, so it's already slow. So this thing is not a great Pokemon. You can see here, there's not really much of a breakdown for some of the sets. And that's because it's just not that great of a Pokemon. If you want to run this, think of it as a challenge Pokemon. It's not going to help you out much, but it could be there as like kind of a challenge. Chandelure, I think, is a pretty good Pokemon. This is actually a great Pokemon. Now, say you're looking at your team and you're like, I need a fire type, but also would like a ghost type. Now, this can actually be a really good Pokemon. Look at that special attack stat, 145. That thing can hit things really hard. Speed is okay, it's not the best, but 80 speed, it means it'll outrun a few things. Special defense, it can take some hits. In defense, it can take some hits. The HP stat, though, kind of leaves it wanting a little bit more in terms of bulk. But this thing is going to be really great in terms of its special attack. And you're going to be running it with mostly either Flame Body or Flash Fire. I would say Flash Fire is better, though, because that's going to help you take advantage of that attack stat, versus Flame Body, which you're going to want to rely on your HP and defense, which is okay, but not the best. So special attack, you want Flash Fire, you want to hit things hard, and it does get good moves like Fire Blast, Shadow Ball, Energy Ball for coverage. That's a great coverage move. You have an Energy Ball, and you don't have to worry about water type moves that much. Calm Mind is also good. So I think Calm Mind is a great great move to run this. And that special defense, which is already pretty decent, you're going to be boosting that. Special attack is already great. You're going to be boosting that as well. So Chandelure is a pretty good fire-type Pokemon if you want Ghost and Fire. And I mean, look at that resistances. A lot of Pokemon that you're going to resist and have immunity to. Torkoal is a fire-type Pokemon. This thing does not have Drought at this point, which is kind of disappointing because Drought is the thing that makes this Pokemon that, you know, we think of Torkoal now in current generation. But you're not going to be able to get Drought on this thing. But it still has some options that you can run with. Mainly that defense stat. Now look at that, 140. You're going to be able to switch these things in and take hits. If you're able to get Shell Smash onto this thing, you're going to be doing a lot more. Now, speed stat's not that great. Really garbage speed stat. But that's okay. You're mostly running this thing to take hits on that physical side and maybe fire back. It is a challenge, though. It's not as easy as throwing, say, Charizard on your team or even Delphox. But it can help you out in certain situations. And think of it as you want to run it for a challenge. Last Pokemon we're going to look at is Heatmor. Now, Heatmor is a Pokemon that is kind of a disappointing Pokemon. Looking at stats, it's trying to be a more offensive Pokemon, but it just doesn't have the speed to take advantage of those attack stats. And its bulk is so garbage, it's going to be knocked out by anything that sneezes at it. Flash Fire is what you really want to go with. But yeah, you can see here, the suggestion is Fire Blast, Knock Off, Giga Drain. It does get Giga Drain, which is good coverage. Focus Blast is good coverage. Sucker Punch to help out with speed, but really, there's so many things that are way better than that. Heatmor is a struggle, and it's a Pokemon you get later in the game. So at this point, you probably already have a fire type on your team. But I do think Heatmor is pretty cool. Well, that's all the Pokemon here in X and Y. If there's some that I missed, put down in the comments. Sometimes I do miss a few as I do these type breakdown videos. I try to get them all, but of course, you know, sometimes as I go through, there's a few that don't quite get on my list. So anyway, if you like this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll see you in the next Pokemon video.